So I've moved my Apple Studio display over here because I've got this over here, and I feel I need to explain this situation. There are several issues with the Apple Studio display. The first one is that it is so expensive you have the choice of paying your mortgage for a month or buying one of these. The second thing is the webcam, which conveniently is behind this Insta360 link, is awful. And the third thing is you can't unplug the power cable unless you want to break it. Now, the BENQ PD3220U may not have quite as sexy a name as the Studio display, and it may not look quite as Apple-y, but it does fix most of those issues, and it's a lot cheaper. As you'd guess, there's loads of specs for this BENQ monitor, and I will just call it the BENQ monitor now. The name is quite long-winded, and anyway, it's on the video title and stuff. It's £999 in the UK at the moment on Amazon, and it's a 31.5-inch IPS panel with LED backlighting. It's got a 3840 by 2160 resolution, HDR10, 1000:1 contrast ratio, DCI P3 color. It's got a 5 millisecond response time, 60 Hz refresh rate, an MBook mode which matches the colour with your MacBook. It's got an anti-glare display screen coating. It tilts, swivels and raises up and down. It's got Thunderbolt 3, HDMI 2.0, DisplayPort, USB connections and a headphone jack. It also comes with a Hockey Puck Gen 2, which is for controlling the menu system and fast switching between colour presets. It's got a built-in KVM, which means you can switch between two different computers with the same mouse and keyboard. It can also be daisy-chained to another 4K monitor. It's got 250 nits of typical brightness and 300 nits of max brightness. And no, it doesn't have a built-in webcam, but I think that's quite an impressive spec list. So we're off to a good start. We've all had this experience with monitors in the past where you have to fit the base to the monitor and attach the back plate, and quite often there are screws involved, and those screws are tiny, you lose them, you have to find your screwdriver in the first place. It's an absolute nightmare. With the BENQ monitor, none of that happens. And the reason for this is that the base just clicks into place. There's no screws involved there at all. There is a screw on the base plate itself, but you just twist it. It's got a little thing on it where you can pull it out, twist it, hand tighten it, happy days. There's some nice cable management built into it as well, and because it's got Thunderbolt 3, you just have one cable between the MacBook and the monitor, and that means it charges your MacBook and you get the image on the display. If you've never had that one cable setup with a MacBook and a monitor, it's absolutely game-changing. When it comes to the look and feel of this monitor, BENQ calls this a metallic bezel-less design. Now, it isn't literally bezel-less. You can see there are bezels, but they are very, very thin. And overall, it's a really nice looking bit of kit. It's quite thick at the back, but I think it looks like it means business. I like monitors that have some substance about them, because when it comes to a monitor like this that you might be using for production reasons or, video editing, all that sort of stuff, if it's got a bit of something about it, it just feels ready for that production. When I walk up those stairs in the morning and see that BENQ monitor, it really does look impressive. And straight out of the box, you can tilt it, you can swivel it, you can lift it up and down on that base. If you want the same functionality on the Apple Studio display, it's 400 quid. And even then, you don't get the ability to do the swivelly thing. And remember, the Apple Studio display starts at 1499, which means adding that extra base functionality, even though it's not as good as this one, takes it up to nearly 1900 quid. This thing already seems like a massive bargain over that Studio display, but how does it perform? If you're new to this channel, I do feel like I should mention that I don't do deep dives into specs, I don't do benchmarking, and trust me, I'm not going to sit here and do colour testing and whatever else you do in a proper monitor review, because I can't be bothered. And also, there's loads of reviews of this BENQ monitor out there already that have done that, and they've done it very well, so I won't try and do it myself, but I can tell you what it's like for a long-term user of the Apple Studio display. And the most impressive thing is the colour accuracy. So the BENQ monitor uses professional colour gamuts certified by Calman and Pantone. I have no idea what that means, but basically this is highly colour accurate. It even comes with a factory calibration report, which I've never had on a monitor before, and this has lots of impressive numbers and stats on there, such as the colour temperature, which is 6500K, the gamma curve, which is sRGB, the colour gamut, which is display P3 as we know, and then things like the measurement device they used to measure this in the factory, which, if you're interested, was the Konica Minolta CA310. We then have things like the Delta E test result, gamut boundary patches, the gamma curve, which does go up, and that can only be a good thing, really. And then we have, this might be a typo possibly, but we have the Gary level, and it's got quite a good Gary level as well. I think that's grayscale. This gives me, who knows nothing about colour measurement and accuracy, and someone who does do a lot of video editing, ironically, it gives me a lot of confidence that whatever I see on this is accurate. When it comes to sharpness, I've had a very mixed bag of experiences with 4K monitors because I've got so used to the displays on things like the MacBook, on the 5K iMac, and more recently, the Studio display. Apple's Retina displays are incredibly impressive. They're sharp, they're bright, they're very colourful, and whenever I go from a Retina display to a 4K monitor, I've always been a bit disappointed with the latter because it just isn't sharp enough. It's a bit woolly, it's just a bit disappointing. This isn't. This BenQ monitor is the sharpest 4K display I've ever seen. If you compare it like for like against the 5K Studio display, there is so little in it. And again, when you consider that difference in price between this and the Studio display over there, it's a no-brainer. And the other reason that's the case is because this is a bigger monitor. It's 31.5 inches versus the 27-inch Studio display. And in real life, that makes a massive difference. And that color matching between this and the MacBook, which is very tricky to show you on this video, but trust me, it just looks identical. Now, the picky refresh rate crew out there will have noticed that this is a 60 Hz display, but so is the Studio display. If you're an avid gamer and you really need that high refresh rate screen, then you probably won't be watching this video, which means most people who are watching this video will be absolutely fine with 60 Hz. Now, there is a difference in brightness between these two monitors. So the BenQ has a peak brightness of 300 nits, whereas, well, we don't know what the peak brightness of the Apple Studio display is because Apple just quotes 600 nits, but whatever, that is still double the nits of this one. Now, do you notice that? Well, yes, if you put them side by side, but are you going to be doing that? No. And trust me, the BenQ monitor is plenty bright enough. I do like that Hockey Puck G2 as well, which means you can very easily change the settings on the monitor rather than reaching round to the back to trick. We've all done that, where you have to reach around and try and find a little knobbly thing to, move around the menu and do all that. You don't have to do that because of that Hockey Puck. And the great thing about the Hockey Puck is that all of those buttons can be customized. So out of the box, the 1, 2, and 3 switches between the color modes, but you can change that if you want to. So if you have certain settings or certain things that you want to access regularly, you can just add them to the Hockey Puck. That KVM switch is very smart as well. That basically means that you can take one keyboard and mouse, connect both of them to the monitor, and then connect two computers to the monitor and share the keyboard and mouse between both of them. So this brings me to an inevitable conclusion about the BENQ PD3220U. Let me level with you guys. I have a very cool job here, which means I get lots of stuff sent to me for free. The BenQ monitor was exactly the same. They've sent me this, they've said keep it, don't bother sending it back. However, I still wasn't convinced that it would replace the Studio display because I've got so used to Apple's monitor. It has. This BenQ monitor is going nowhere. I love the color accuracy, I love the sharpness, which honestly is just so close to that 5K Studio display. It's amazing. I love the swiveling, the moving it up and down. And the big question is, if I went back 18 months to when I bought that Studio display and I knew this existed, would I still have bought Apple's expensive display? No. This BenQ monitor is an absolute no-brainer. If you're thinking about the Studio display at the moment, think about this instead.